Government and the private sector have worked closely together to grow the global business services sector from a small group of companies to one of the world's leading players. And I should say here, South Africa has become an attractive market for global business services. Our young people are being employed in large numbers. The global business service sector is on track to create 500,000 new jobs over the next few years. And these are young people who are being attracted to these opportunities. The hemp and cannabis, I go back to its sector, which is a new sector we are promoting, has the potential to create more than 130,000 new jobs. We are streamlining the regulatory process so that hemp and cannabis can thrive like it is in other countries. And as I said earlier, it is going to benefit a number of our people, particularly in those areas where this is grown in a big way as a great commodity. Now, as we proceed, we are finding that these new sectors, the sectors that should be promoted, are sectors that we should focus attention on because they create more jobs on an ongoing basis. The sectors that we are focusing on are sectors that a number of other countries have already shown a great deal of growth in already. Now, with all this, we are finding that we can inject growth into our economy. We can see exponential growth as more and more of these new sectors come forward. Now, other sectors are the social sector, for instance, including early childhood development, nursing, social work, and community services, which have shown significant potential not only to create jobs, but to provide vital services to communities, as well as to provide training for young people. Some of the country's mature industries also have a lot to offer in revamping the industrial and manufacturing potential of our country. The agricultural sector has significant potential for job creation in crops such as citrus, table and dried grapes, subtropical fruit, avocados, berries, and nuts. Master plans in the sugar and poultry industry are contributing significantly to increased investment, improved production and transformation. To attract investors into the mining minerals needed in the new global economy, we will soon be finalizing our mining exploration strategy. We will continue to support the development of upstream gas industry as it holds huge potential for job creation and broader economic development. We will ensure that this is done in strict accordance with the environmental as well as other laws of our country, and that where there are differences, we work together to resolve those differences in the interests of our country and the interests of our people, particularly with regard to creating jobs. We live in one of the regions of the world that is most affected by climate change. We frequently experience droughts, floods, and other extreme weather events associated with global warming. Recently, floods have affected a number of provinces in our country, including KwaZulu-Natal, Gauteng, and the Eastern Cape. These have already caused enormous damage to infrastructure, but also to livelihoods. In the last year, we have made important strides in the fight against climate change and at the same time securing our economic competitiveness. For the first time, our climate targets are compatible with limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. This is the goal that all countries agreed to as part of the Paris Climate Agreement and is essential to prevent the worst effects of climate change. Now, since I established the Presidential Climate Change Commission, working with Deputy Chairperson to the Commission, Vali Musa, a little more than a year ago, it has done much work to support a just transition to a sustainable, inclusive, resilient, and low-carbon economy. At the International Climate Conference in Glasgow last November, South Africa was able to arrive at a historic 131 billion rand deal with a number of partners. This first-of-its-kind partnership will involve repurposing and repowering some of the coal plants that are reaching the end of their lives and creating new livelihoods for workers and communities most affected and impacted by this change. To ensure that South Africa is able to derive the full benefit of this and other partnerships, I have appointed Mr. Daniel Minele, a former Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank, as head of the Presidential Climate Finance Task Team to lead the mobilization of funds for our just transition. Now, properly managed, the energy transition will benefit all. Renewable energy production will make electricity cheaper and more dependable and will allow our industries to remain globally competitive as well. And in this regard, a number of our fairly sizable companies are already leading the way. And it's important that as government, we walk in tow with the innovations, the technological advances that they have already embraced. Investments in electric vehicles and hydrogen will equip South Africa to meet the global clean energy future. We will be able to expand our mining industry in strategic minerals that are crucial for clean energy, like platinum, vanadium, cobalt, copper, manganese, and lithium. We also have a unique opportunity in green hydrogen, given our world-class solar and wind resources and local technology and expertise. And all these measures, from the structural reforms to support our small, medium enterprises and investments in infrastructure and energy and emergency of new sectors, will drive a turnaround to economic growth driven, yes, by the private sector growth over the coming years. We know, however, that even with the best business environment and much faster rates of economic growth, it will take time for the private sector to create enough jobs for the millions of South Africans who need those jobs. Our intention is to make sure that as a nation we leave no one behind. That is why we are expanding public and social employment. The first two phases of the Presidential Employment Stimulus Programs, which we launched in October of 2020, have supported over 850,000 opportunities. More than 80% of the participants in these opportunities were young people, and over 60% of the participants were women. Now, that is an important development. And we were able to do this within a short space of time. Once we were hit by COVID, we gathered our wits around and decided that we needed to give protection to our people and to expand employment opportunities. This program has also supported young women like Tracy Nkosi from Springs, who was employed as an education assistant in Welgedag Primary School, and who says this opportunity has motivated her to further her studies in the educational sphere. She was brought in when we brought in assistants into our schools at the height of COVID, and we brought hundreds of thousands of them, and Tracy is one of those. And once arriving at the school to do what she thought would be menial work, she immediately found that she could do more important work, and now she wants to advance her studies and become an educator. It has also supported Umama Unosipho Tekwana from Mpendle in KwaZulu-Natal, who used her farming input voucher, which was part of this program, to buy maize, to buy manure, and supplements for her livestock. The total number of direct beneficiaries will soon rise to over 1 million South Africans with regards to the plan that we now have. This includes over 500,000 young people appointed as education assistants, making it the largest youth employment program ever undertaken in our history. The employment stimulus will also enable the Department of Home Affairs to recruit 10,000 unemployed young people for the digitization of paper records in the department, enhancing their skills and contributing. They will also be contributing to the modernization of citizen services. Now, these are young people that currently are unemployed that we will bring in. We would like to bring in more, but our fiscal position does not enable us to do so. The Social Employment Fund will create a further 50,000 work opportunities using the capability of organizations beyond government in areas such as urban agriculture, early childhood development, public art, and tackling gender-based violence. In addition to expanding public employment, we are providing support to young people to prepare them for the work and link them to opportunities in industries. To encourage hiring by smaller businesses, we will be increasing the value and expanding the criteria for participation in the Employment Tax Initiative. Now, this tax initiative has proven to be one of the most successful programs that we have put in place to bring in young people into the world of work. And invariably, the majority of them always find permanent employment once they are brought in through this program. We want to expand this so that more young people are brought into the world of work. For several years, this has been an effective way to encourage companies to hire new work seekers. The changes to the incentive will make it easier for small businesses in particular to hire young people. The Minister of Finance will announce the details of these changes in the budget. We call on companies to support this effort, to take up the incentive and give young people a place in the world of work. The SA Youth.mobi platform for young work seekers to access opportunities and support has now risen to 2.3 million young South Africans who have registered. And of these, over 600,000 have been placed in employment opportunities. A revitalized National Youth Service will recruit its first cohort of 50,000 young people during this next year, creating opportunities for young people to contribute to their communities, to develop skills, and to grow their own employability. The Department of Higher Education and Training will place 10,000 unemployed TVET graduates in workplaces from April of 2020. Now, that is a big number, but we obviously would want more. In preparing this State of the Nation address, I was assisted by 2 young South Africans who are working as interns in the presidency, Ms. Naledi Malachi and Kiarabetsui Mabatle. Now, they told me about the pain that is felt by young people who find themselves with a qualification but are unemployed because of lack of experience. This forces many into jobs that have little or nothing to do with what they have studied. Now, all the measures I've outlined are essential to provide young people with the work experience that they need to take up their first step in the labor market. Now, we call on the private sector to support these measures and wherever possible to drop the requirement of experience so that we can give many young people a possible chance for their first job. Now, as we work to grow the economy and create jobs, we will expand support to poor families to ensure that no person in this country has to endure the pain and indignity of hunger. Our social protection system is amongst the greatest achievement of the democratic government, reaching more than 18 million people every month. Without this support, millions more would live in dire poverty. Since the onset of COVID-19, the Social Relief of Distress Grant has provided support to more than 10 million unemployed people who were most vulnerable to the impact of the pandemic. Some people use the money to start businesses. Mr. Tando Makubu from Soweto received 350 grant for 7 months last year and saved it to open an ice cream store that now employs 4 people. Now, Mr. Lindogu Msomi, an unemployed TV producer from Kwamashu Hostel, saved the 350 that he received for 9 months to start a fast food stall and to support his family. And as much as it has had a substantial impact, we must recognize that we face extreme fiscal constraints. A fiscal crisis would hurt the poor most of all through the deterioration of the basic services on which they rely. Mindful of the proven benefits of the grant, we will extend the 350 SRD grant for 1 further year to the end of March 2023. And we have been in deep consultations with a number of community-based organizations who have articulated very clearly to us the dire needs in our communities, but have also appreciated the challenged fiscal position that we are facing. And this is something that I am sure they will be able to appreciate. But we have also said we will continue conversations. We will continue conversations with them going forward. During this time, We will engage in broad consultations and detailed technical work to identify the best options to replace this grant. Any further support must pass the test of our own affordability and must not come at the expense of basic services or at the risk of unsustainable spending. It remains our ambition to establish a minimum level of support for those in greatest need. Expanding access to land is vital for our efforts to reduce hunger and to provide people with meaningful livelihoods. We are moving ahead with land reform in terms of our constitution and anticipate the approval of the expropriation bill during this year. The establishment of the Agriculture and Land Reform Development Agency will be finalized this year. The Department of Public Works and Infrastructure will finalize the transfer of 14,000 hectares of state land to the Housing Development Agency. We have enough arable land to support millions of thriving small-scale farmers in poultry, livestock, fruit, and vegetables. Now, through the Presidential Employment Stimulus and the Solidarity Fund, over 100,000 small-scale farmers have already received input vouchers to expand their production. This scheme has proven to be effective and impactful, and it has established a very good delivery mechanism that ensures that we are able to reach so many of the small-scale farmers. The agriculture sector has also recognized the importance of supporting these small-scale farmers and integration into their value chains. Now, through the Sugar Master Plan, the sugar industry has provided 225 million rand to over 12,000 small-scale farmers who are in the sugarcane industry as part of a 1 billion rand commitment to support black farmers. We will be expanding the provision of input vouchers and calling on all sectors to join this effort. I would like to see a situation where various sectors of agriculture, whether it is in the fruit sector, in the beef sector, in the sheep sector, and many other sectors, collectively helping in these sectors like the sugar cane industry has done. But on our part, we will collectively reach out to 250,000 small-scale farmers this year, expanding beyond the 100,000 that we reached last year. None of our efforts to revive our economy will succeed if we do not tackle the scourge of corruption once and for all. Since the beginning of the year, I've been provided with the first two parts of the report of the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture headed by Acting Chief Justice Raymond Zondo. While the definitive conclusion has yet to be delivered at the end of this month, the first two parts of the report make it plain that there was indeed state capture. This means that public institutions and state-owned enterprises were infiltrated by a criminal network intent on looting public money for private gain. The reports have detailed the devastating effects on these criminal activities on the SAA, Transnet, Denel, South African Revenue Service, and government communications. Now, state capture had a direct and very concrete negative impact on the lives of all South Africans, but especially the poorest and most vulnerable members of our society. It has weakened the ability of the state to deliver services and to meet the expectations and constitutional rights of our people. We must now do everything in our power to ensure that it never happens again. My responsibility is to ensure that the Commission report is properly and carefully considered and then acted upon. Now, by no later than June, I will present the plan of action in response to the Commission's recommendations. And I'll present it to you sitting right here. We will, as the Commission's first report recommends, strengthen the system to protect whistleblowers who are a vital safeguard in the fight against corruption and who take huge personal risk in reporting wrongdoing. We are doing a detailed review of all applicable legislation and a comparative study of other jurisdictions to strengthen whistleblower protection. The relevant law enforcement agencies are taking the necessary steps to address the immediate concern about the safety of whistleblowers. Now, many individuals and companies that the Commission has found were responsible for state capture must now be held accountable. I have every confidence that the National Prosecuting Authority will carry out the further investigations that the Commission has recommended, and that it will bring the members of the criminal network that infiltrated government and captured the state swiftly to justice. Now, the investigating directorate in the NPA is now poised to deliver on its crucial mandate, and a dedicated team has been established to pursue these cases. We will be appointing a new head of the investigating directorate following the departure of its head from that position. An amendment to the State Capture Commission regulations in June in 2020 empowered the sharing of information between the Commission and the law enforcement agencies. This amendment also permitted the employment of the State Capture Commission personnel by law enforcement agencies. Now, these empowering provisions have geared the investigating directorate to more effectively pursue the investigations emanating from the Commission. We have gratefully acknowledged the offer of support from the private sector to assist in providing those skills which we lack in government to enable investigation and prosecution of crime. To ensure that the prosecuting authority remains true to its constitutional obligation and mandate, and to ensure transparency, we are developing a framework for private sector cooperation that will be managed through the National Treasury. There are also discussions underway with the judiciary for the creation of special court roles for state capture and corruption cases. While we have taken decisive steps to end the era of state capture, we know that the fight against corruption is far from over. Even as the country was suffering from the devastation of COVID-19 pandemic, companies and individuals were conspiring with public officials to defraud government of billions of rands in COVID-19 related contracts. As soon as evidence emerged of this corruption, we acted. we withdrew certain emergency procurement regulations, set up a fusion center that brought together law enforcement agencies. We published the details of COVID-related contracts online and instituted the most extensive investigation that the Special Investigating Unit has ever undertaken since its formation. In December, the SIU submitted its final report on its investigation into COVID-related contracts. As a result, 45 matters with a combined value of 2.1 billion have been enrolled with the special tribunal. The SIU has referred 224 government officials for disciplinary action and has referred 386 cases for possible prosecution by the NPA. Now, we have set up, as the presidency, a monitoring mechanism of implementation on the recommendations of the SIU and to ensure that government departments and entities do act against those who have violated regulations and broken the law. The fight against corruption will take on a new intensity thanks to the outcome of the State Capture Commission, the strengthening of law enforcement agencies, and the implementation of new anti-corruption practices in the public service. State-owned enterprises play a vital role in our economy, from water and roads to energy and ports to defense and aviation. These strategic assets of our nation are necessary to keep our country running. It is essential that we reverse their decline and reposition them to contribute positively. We have therefore embarked on several immediate measures to restore these companies to health at the same time as we undertake far-reaching reforms that will make our SOEs more efficient, competitive, accountable, and sustainable. The Presidential SOE Council, which I appointed in 2020, has recommended that government adopt a centralized shareholding model for its key commercial state-owned companies. This would separate the state's ownership functions from its policy-making and regulatory functions, and to minimize the scope for political interference, introduce greater professionalism, and manage state assets in a way that protects shareholder value. Now, as part of this, preparatory work has begun for the establishment of a state-owned holding company to house strategic SOEs and to exercise coordinated shareholder oversight. To ensure that state-owned enterprises are effectively fulfilling their responsibility, the Council is preparing recommendations on state-owned enterprises to be retained, on which should be retained and which should be consolidated, and which do not serve the purpose of the public should be disposed of. Any recommendations would be subjected to extensive consultation with all stakeholders. We are taking steps to safeguard our democracy, to protect our economic infrastructure, and to build safer communities for all. Earlier this week, we released a report on the expert panel that I appointed into the civil unrest in July last year. The report paints a deeply disturbing picture of the capabilities of our security services and the structures that exist to coordinate their work. The report concludes that government's initial handling of the July 2021 events was inept, police operational planning was poor, there was poor coordination between the state security and intelligence services, and police are not always embedded in the communities that they serve. Now, the expert panel said that if violence has exposed anything, it was the poverty and inequality that is the root cause of the desperation of our people. The panel found that Cabinet must take overall responsibility for the events of July 2021. Now, this is a responsibility that we acknowledge and we also accept. We will, as recommended by the panel, develop and drive a national response to address the weaknesses that the panel identified. We will begin immediately by filling critical vacancies and addressing positions affected by suspensions in the State Security Agency and in crime intelligence. We will soon be announcing leadership changes in a number of security agencies to strengthen our security structures. Now, the staffing of the Public Order Policing Unit of the South African Police Service will be brought to an appropriate level with appropriate training in place as well. The ongoing damage to and theft of economic infrastructure has damaged confidence and severely constrained economic growth, investment, and job creation. At the same time, we need to confront the criminal gangs that invade construction sites and other business places to extort money from companies. This will require a focused and coordinated response. Government is therefore going to move ahead, and we've established specialized multidisciplinary units to address economic sabotage, extortion at construction sites, and vandalization of infrastructure. We will make resources available. We are going to make resources available to recruit and train an additional 12,000 new police personnel to ensure that the South African Police Service increases its capacity.